All right, it's 1 o'clock, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing today? Nervous? Yeah, it's presentation time's always nervous. I remember when I was in college, I always used to get super nervous for presentations too. Like, and even now too. I mean, I'm used to teaching classes, and so I don't really get nervous in front of you guys anymore. But before Thanksgiving, actually, I had to give a presentation to the whole department on my research, and also the provost. And I'm like, man, I haven't felt this nervous in a long time. Like I was shaking. So, but that's good. It shows that you care a lot about the about the presentation that you're going to do. So, and it's it's only going to be 15 minutes of your life, and then after that, life will go on. That's what I always tell myself in those situations. Okay, and so we have 4 presentations on the docket today, and so we have our first presentation is going to be from the Theranos group. The second one is going to be from deepfakes. Third presentation is going to be from the wildfires caused by PG&E. And finally, the last presentation today is going to be the Space Shuttle Columbia. Okay. Announcements. And so before we begin today, or I guess let me ask. So is all the Theranos group here?
I am here.
I think we're just waiting for one member to log in.
Okay. Yeah, I have a couple things I have to say, and so hopefully that'll give a bit more time. Let's have you guys start at 1:05. Okay. Okay. So the one thing I want to talk about before we begin today is SOQs. Okay. So SOQs are out, and just like the last few semesters, we're doing them virtually. Right? So I think you can access them either through Canvas or you can access it through My Fullerton. And so please go fill out the SOQs. Okay. And so SOQs are really important for me because it's kind of like your guys' way of grading me. Okay. And so I've spent like the last 16 weeks, giving you guys feedback and grading you guys, with the intention to have you guys learn everything that there is to know about engineering economics and ethics. Okay. But for me, the things that I need to learn right now is how to be a good instructor. Okay. And the only way that I really learn how to do that is by reading your guys' feedback. And so, I take that feedback really seriously. And I know everyone says that, because you have to say it, right? The Chick-fil-A will always say that, they take your comments very seriously. But, I can tell you, personally for me, when I get my SOQs, and usually they don't deliver to me until a month after the semester ends, like I read every single comment. And and honestly for me, like I don't really read the I think there's 3 sections where you guys can comment, right? Like you can comment on the good things that I did, the bad things that I did, and just kind of any extra comments. The only sections that I really read is just the bad things that I did or the things that I could have done better, because that's information that I can use to make myself a better instructor, which is why I'm here, is to be as good of an instructor as I can be, for you guys, the students. And so please go fill out the SOQs and please, just the only thing I ask of you guys is just to be as honest as you can. Okay. If you don't give me honest feedback, then it's not really useful. And I'll tell you too that I've grown up in the era of online gaming, and so I'm used to people saying very nasty things to me. And so I've had people curse me out on the SOQ before, and that's totally fine with me. And in fact, so it's only happened twice, but the 2 people that have cursed me out before, I actually found those comments to be probably the most useful out of all that I've gotten. Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, it's all feedback. So it's all part of, it's all part of my growing process. Just like when I give you guys feedback, it's part of your growth and learning process as well. Okay. So, I've always believed that, everyone on this earth is still learning how to do things better, right? So no matter how smart or how learned someone might be, there's always more for them to learn. And the way that you learn is from other people. Like you talk to them, you get feedback, and this is the way that I get better at this job. Okay, so please go fill it out. I believe the SOQs are due by this Friday, and so you need to go fill it out by then. When Canvas decides to come back, I'll send an email out to remind you guys, maybe sometime tomorrow or Thursday, just to make sure we get all of those in, because the more feedback that I get, the better. Okay. All right. Any questions? Any last minute questions I can answer before we get started with the Theranos group? Okay, all right. And so Theranos group, is everyone here now?
I think so.
Okay, great. So I've enabled screen share, so you guys can go ahead and share your screen, okay? And then you guys can start when you're ready, and you guys will have 15 minutes. And so, because our schedule's a little bit tight, because it's going to take some time to transition between groups, so I am going to be fairly strict about the timing. And so I'll keep my webcam on, and then I'll give you hand signals to tell you how much time you have left. So when you have 10 minutes, I'll go like this. 5 minutes, it'll go like this. 2 minutes, 1 minute. And so just keep an eye on me as you're presenting as well. Okay.
Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
All right.
Alrighty, hello everyone. My name is Manel Antonio, and my group and I will be talking to you about the blow show at Silicon Valley. Okay, so a little introductions. Theranos was a medical device company started by a college chemical engineer dropout, Elizabeth Holmes. Holmes was terrified of needles, just like many people around the world. Essentially, Holmes wanted to create a device that would avoid the use of needles when you're getting your blood drawn. Theranos claimed that their technology could perform over 240 blood tests with just a few drops of blood. These blood samples were obtained by pricking the tip of your finger. Their technology never worked correctly or at all. Theranos lies, but put many lives at risk. Some people were given fake positives or negative results, which sometimes led them to spend a few nights at the hospital. Medical devices are extremely important in everyone's life. They assure we live a healthy and comfortable life. Without the trust of the American people in the medical device industry, advances in these technologies can be affected. So some historical context. The original idea for Theranos technology was a TheraPatch. The main goal was to abolish the use of big needles and painful procedures when getting your blood drawn. The TheraPatch is it's the first picture at the top. So Elizabeth Holmes wanted more, so they can create the Edison. So they created the Edison. This device worked by inserting a small amount of blood obtained by just a prick of your finger. It would allow doctors to see if the medication was at the right dosage. This device optimal location will be at patients' homes, so they can test their blood regularly. The Edison was then re-engineered and was said to be able to perform 240 blood tests. These tests included tests for Lyme disease, HIV, cancer, etc. The Edison was said to be faster, more accurate, more accessible, and cheaper. Companies like Walgreens, Pfizer, and Safeway partnered with Theranos to use the Edison as a mini blood lab.
So Holmes and her company has never provided much details about the workings of Edison. It was supposed to revolutionize the way that blood test was done. Theranos claimed that the test worked by drawing a small amount of blood from a finger prick and storing it in a proprietary piece of equipment called an annotator. All of the tests were supposed to be done on the Edison, but it never happened. Of all the tests that they claimed to be possible with the Edison, FDA has only approved one, which was for the herpes virus. The first device, Edison, was designed to perform immunoassays, which look for the presence of antibodies and antigens in blood. The second device, Minilab, was similar to its predecessor. The Minilab was expected to be fully modular, where detachable units could be changed in and out in accordance with the test being performed. The top right picture is a single-use cartridge. It carries the blood sample and all the needed reagents needed to perform the test. The bottom right is a material handling bot, and it moves in a Cartesian space in order to perform the test.
So for economical context, Theranos had raised $1.3 billion in investments. Some well-known investors are Walgreens, Oracle chairman Larry Ellison at the time had donated or invested, and Safeway. At its peak in 2013 and 2014, their net worth was $9 billion. Since the case is still relatively new, evidence of financial documents have not been disclosed. Elizabeth Holmes was even accused of destroying financial documents in her final days at Theranos. And then Walgreens had sued them for $140 million, but they ended up settling for only $30 million. Now Holmes and Balwani can face up to 20 years, and they are fined $250,000 each for every count of wire fraud. The total adds up to $2.25 million, not including the additional restitution for their victims. So the graph on the picture on the left is the rise and fall of Theranos throughout their years. You can see the company was founded in 2003, And then throughout, they were considered a unicorn industry because of their technology. And then at the end, all the lawsuits and all the partnerships dealing out had caused them to become bankrupt and have no more money. And then the picture on the right are high profile investors who invested in. So like the Walton family, the Cox family, and how much money they had invested into the company.
All right, so my name is Sebastian Solis, and I'm going to be going over the personnel context. So the first person I'm going to be going over is Elizabeth Holmes. She was the founder, CEO, and primary shareholder of Theranos. She had over 50% of the shares. Because she had the most shares, she also had the most at stake in terms of like the company's success. She also made like the main decisions. And viewing her interviews and listening to personal accounts allowed for the conclusion to be made that she was extremely determined to be successful, which led to the manipulation, lying, and harassment that ensued the scandal. And it can be seen that engineers were not involved in higher level decision-making, as Elizabeth had a tendency to fire people who did not align with her values of the company, and even put engineering teams pitted against each other. So the next person I'm going to be talking about is Ramesh Balwani. He's also known as Sunny. He was the former president and chief operating officer of Theranos. His executive board position meant that he had a lot of stake in the company as well. Accounts from others stated that he was with Elizabeth for a majority of important meetings, meaning he also had a large say-so in what occurred within the company. He also had a romantic relationship with Elizabeth, which was most likely the driving factor for him to continue supporting her in the company for so long. So these are the whistleblowers, which were the people who revealed everything that was happening on the inside of Theranos. So we have Erica Chung on the left, Tyler Schultz on the right, and then in the middle, we have John Carreyrou, who was the Wall Street Journal reporter who helped them tell their stories. So Tyler was a research engineer at Theranos who wanted people to find that Theranos was not being truthful about their findings. So he anonymously reached out to the WSJ. And then Erica worked in the lab and saw firsthand how many corners were cut in order so that way Theranos could seem successful to the public. So they both had quite a lot to lose, primarily their jobs, but they both actually ended up quitting. And although they had no stake in the company, they both faced major legal implications by speaking out, even verbal harassment in some cases. And then watching the HBO documentary, Tyler said he had to pay around like $500,000 out of pocket just dealing with all the legal actions. So this is a clear example that the engineers and workers had no say in the wrongdoings of the company, and some of them even had to pay for the mistakes.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jesus Answategi, and I will be talking about the description of ethical labs. Since the beginning of her adult life, we can see how Holmes is making ethical decisions that will affect the outcome of her life as well as others. At the very beginning, she dropped out of Stanford and invested her tuition to create her own company with the ambition of becoming as big as Steve Jobs. This will be a very high risk but high reward decision as she's putting at stake a very prestigious education. As her company grew, so did her vision of what the Edison could be, making her obsessed with the outcome. She gained huge retail giant investors such as the Walton family and Walgreens, as well as support from various family members. Investors took a risk approach to the company based on her capabilities and future potential as an individual. The company received a valuation of up to $9 billion based on the potential of the Edison. The potential high reward became a huge upset for companies involved, as well as retail investors, as millions were lost. Tests were confirmed to be performed with the same regular methods used in the medical field. The company piles up losses of up to $376 million. She continues seeking the long-term win by in the short term continuing to have the product in the market. Whistleblowers who were working for Holmes revealed to the media that the Edison does not work as intended. Lab scientists have testified that lab results were deleted to ensure control tests pass. She fails to adhere to the IEEE and SPE by putting the safety and health of the customers at risk. She also ignores honest criticism of technical work from employees by pressuring to make her vision a reality. Now I will be talking about the analysis of ethical dilemma. Ultimately, Holmes was advised by her staff that the Edison did not work as intended. Her overconfidence and bias for the company led her to collect investors on a false idea. She violates the concept of utilitarianism by decreasing the well-being of customers with false information about their health, while homes' well-being increased with the rise of the company's valuation. She displays a lack of virtue ethics as she was being dishonest, irresponsible, and disrespectful. She also shows a lack of company morality as she was focused on becoming the next A-list entrepreneur and disregarded the actual product, which led to the company's extinction and unemployment of her staff. And she displays a disregard for safety as the Edison was only approved by the FDA for one of the hundreds of promised tests. This is an unacceptable risk as the product did not live up to the valuation and public was not informed of the actual test being performed, which endangered many. She greatly diminishes organizational culture as the Theranos mission statement was to facilitate and prevent diseases, which is the opposite of what they achieved.
In 2015, a Wall Street Journal was published, which exposed how Theranos technology did not work as intended and their attempted cover-up. This jeopardized the lives of thousands. Investors started suing, beginning with their largest investor, PFM. Other agencies, such as Center for Medical Care and Medicaid Services, which is a government agency for regulating blood testing labs. Walgreens sued for breach of contract, and the state of Arizona sued in order to get refunds for anyone who took the blood test. Over 100,000 consumers were affected during the peak of Theranos, and the 2 years of test results were voided, correcting tens of thousands of blood test results. In March of 2018, Theranos was charged with fraud, and Holmes was barred from serving as officer or director of any public company for the next 10 years. June of the same year, Holmes and Balwani were indicted for 11 criminal charges relating to wire fraud. The trial is still ongoing due to multiple setbacks, but Holmes and Balwani face up to 20 years in prison if convicted. Due to the nature of Holmes' overambitious goals, it would be difficult to advise changing the fundamental ideas behind her project. Thus, it would be easier for her to be more truthful in the quality and reliability of her Edison machine. By being deceitful towards the public and her investors, she dug herself a very deep hole, one which she could not escape from. She had done everything she could in order to keep employees and the public in the dark regarding the truth behind her project. Had she been truthful, it would have been more in line with NSPE Code 1.3 and 1.5, which dealt with being truthful and honest to the public while avoiding deceitful acts.
So outlooks for future situations. So the technology that Theranos was trying to create would have been a game changer for everyone's life. This technology could have detected deadly disease early enough, which could have saved someone's life. In addition to this technology would have made getting your blood drawn a little bit less scary. Future projects in the medical device industry should have clear and sufficient data to back up their claim. This technology should follow the rules of the FDA, CMS, or whatever government agency which their technology falls under. When looking for investors, this company should be truthful, not give promises which they cannot uphold, and should provide live, truthful demos of their technology. Because of the lies that Theranos top executives told the public, it will be hard for some to believe in future medical advances. In order for many to believe, companies need to provide truthful and sufficient data which will back up what they have created.
So the issue of secrecy was always an excuse that Theranos used in order to, they used the fear that their technology would get stolen in order to not reveal any information about their device. So in order to prevent this, there should be some sort of third-party testing company that would face legal implications that they were to ever reveal any information other than if the results were legit or not. And the whistleblowers in this situation were able to get the truth out, but they faced plenty of obstacles in order to do so. Like I discussed, Tyler had to pay a lot out of money and lots of verbal abuse as well. It seems like there were not enough protective measures to ensure that these employees have a voice when speaking out against big corporations. So both people, and then both people faced many legal issues due to the document they had to sign in order to work at Theranos, which meant that they couldn't talk about certain things or had to be really secret about everything. So that should have never happened.
So in a conclusion and summary, Elizabeth Holmes created Theranos and was a major shareholder. So basically she had a lot at stake during the company. Edison was supposed to be revolutionary, but couldn't meet the company's goal. While knowing the technology didn't work, they continued to lie to investors, media, patients, and others. With the help of John Curia and the whistleblowers, they spoke out against Theranos, which resulted in Theranos scandal coming out and costing the company everything. Now Elizabeth Holmes and Ramesh Balwani stand trial. While Holmes and Balwani weren't engineers, no one should lie to investors about technology that isn't real or cannot work. And it is our job as engineers to speak out if we know malpractice or breaking codes of ethics are occurring. Any questions?
Great, thank you guys. Great, great timing too. We do have time for a quick question if anyone wants to ask. Okay, so I'm not seeing any questions. So thank you guys again. So I know it's virtual, but let's give them a hand. Okay. Great job, everybody. Okay, and so the next group that we have going is the deepfakes group, right? And so is everyone from deepfakes here?
Yeah.
I
Oh.
believe so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're here.
Okay, great. So you can go ahead and share your screen. Give me just 1 minute to set up your rubric.
No problem.
All right, I'm all set. So you guys can go whenever you guys are ready.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Our project or our case study is on deepfakes. And so I just wanted to open up with a quick definition of what a deepfake is. A deepfake is a video of a person in which their face or body has been digitally altered so they appear to be someone else. The issue that can come up with this is it can be used with malicious intent or even to, spread some type of misinformation. On the less nefarious side, this kind of technology can be used, for memes, for laughs, and as well as like CGI in movies to like digitally alter actors to look younger, or even, to look like someone else when it comes to like stunt doubles and stuff like that. The origins aren't completely known, but may be linked to as early as 1997 with the software video rewrite, which was used to take an existing video and dub over a different audio track to make the person in the video look like they're saying something else.
Can you guys make it full screen? You can click on the top right button. Yeah.
Oh, right. So where slideshow?
Slideshow. Top right.
There we go.
Perfect.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So despite that early media in the late 90s, it really gathered popularity around 2017. At this time, the technology had time to kind of advance and it became more accessible to like the average consumer. In 2018, a series of deepfake videos actually went viral, one of which was put out by BuzzFeed in joint with the comedian writer Jordan Peele, who is known for doing impressions of the former President Barack Obama. And in that video, they digitally altered Obama's face to kind of like have his lips move. And Jordan Peele did his impression and they made a video making it look like a message coming from the former president. And even around that time, apps like Snapchat, which was pretty readily available on everyone's phone, came out with a face swap filter where you could have a photo from your gallery of someone else's face and put it on your face. And although, it wasn't the best, it was still out there for everyone to use. The major ethical concerns that arise with this type of technology is that a user can make the subject of the video say and do whatever they want. These issues can range from like people making revenge porn for extortion, making politicians appear to say shocking things and spread misinformation, and as well as it violates people's proprietary privacy. With how fast this technology grew, there wasn't many laws regulating deepfake technology, so the government had to act fast in passing laws.
Okay, so I will be talking about historical context. The origin of the term deepfakes was from a person on Reddit under the username deepfakes, but the technology / ideology of it never started at around 1997. This would be through a software called video rewrite. And although technically this wasn't really the first software of its kind, it was definitely the most convincing and complicated version. This software would be able to interpret faces, synthesize audio from text, and model lips in 3D space. This would be the foundation for future programs used even today, such as Premiere Pro and Final Cut. Next slide. And then this would cause a spark in the knowledge of facial recognition. This was proven in 2001 when 3 people named Timothy Coots, Gareth Edwards, and Christopher Taylor would develop a software called Active Appearance Models. This would be a software that would be able to make a model match and shape it to any image. So in this figure below, the software is finding facial features after just 3 tries, even though the person was initially positioned badly. Next slide. Major ethical concerns. Oh, sorry. Throughout the years, many more softwares would be developed and researched upon. And in 2017, a team of researchers from the University of Washington would make headlines on a video they made about a computer-generated Barack Obama speaking using his old audio clips and videos. As mentioned earlier, the term deepfakes, however, never really actually was coined until 2017 when the username deepfakes on Reddit created a machine learning algorithm that would help them transpose celebrity faces onto porn videos easily and very well. Next slide. This would eventually lead us to one of the more popular deepfakes known today. In April of 2018, there was a deepfake video posted by BuzzFeed where, as mentioned earlier, comedian writer Jordan Peele dubbed audio over a deepfake of former President Barack Obama. This would spiral into many more popular deepfake videos more known today, such as ones for Nancy Pelosi, Mark Zuckerberg, and Nicolas Cage. So now we'll be talking about the technical context. Although there are many types of engineers that would be involved in this project, most of it boiled down to 2 main subjects, computer engineering and computer science. Computer engineering was needed a lot because this software involved intensive graphics cards and as well as good processor units. And then computer science was needed because of the programming for the software. This project, as mentioned earlier, started since 1997 until even now, and many new technologies such software has been developed and updated, such as video rewrite became active appearance models, then became fake app, and then face-to-face, and there's always the upgrades of new graphics cards and processor units. And all of this can be seen on common apps and technology nowadays through filters and facial ID recognition on phones. So now I'll leave it off to Fabrizio.
Okay, so I'm going to be talking about the economic concept surrounding deepfakes. Since it's a relatively new technology, only just coming out in 2017, it hasn't really done anything for the economy. And while it hasn't done anything for the world economy, it can still affect certain people. Low threat as of now due to a lack of data regarding the safety measures, but it could potentially be used for fraud and extortion. And this threat can affect individuals, companies, markets, and even financial regulatory structures like banks. And I posted a chart on the right that kind of shows how this process can occur. A person collects data on the person they're trying to impersonate. They use the software to copy the person's voice. And finally, they make the call and pretend to be someone else. From there, it's easy to manipulate someone into giving information. And although not pictured here, one other scenario involving deepfakes is manipulation of the stock market. Someone can make a deepfake of a CEO saying rude, harmful things that reflects off the company. And in turn, this drives the stock prices down, allowing people to swoop in and purchase these stocks. The idea is that the synthetic media created has distributed across social media. And by the time a statement is given correcting the information, it's already too late. I'm done. You can move on.
Personal context. Nobody really knows who invented the deepfakes. It has rumor it was created by a software engineer whose purpose was to develop a kit that was efficient enough to allow users to create their own manipulate videos. The code is open source, therefore you have multiple programs. In 2017, a Reddit user named Deepfakes posted pornographic videos claiming that belonged to famous celebrities. These got the attention of the people in the media. Next slide. The Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, also known as DARPA, became involved because an unskilled person can tamper with any visual media. Users of the deepfakes app were using it for pornography, politics, blackmails, and memes. DARPA funded projects to counter deepfakes, and the USA government has introduced the Deepfakes Accountability Act, which states anyone could be charged with produce any deepfakes without a watermark.
Hey everybody, my name is Justin Fernandez and I'll be presenting the description of the ethical lapse and analysis of ethical dilemma sections. Deepfakes pose an inherent risk to the proprietary privacy of an individual, perhaps more so than any other technology. Proprietary privacy is the concept of being able to protect aspects of one's own identity. Additionally, if one's likeness is used in a deepfake, it also implies a misuse of that likeness, as it is then displayed performing actions the person has not done. However, the ethical implication is not limited to a matter of principle. Deepfakes are conducive to creating an environment where a person's likeness can be used for malicious purposes. Fraud and blackmail immediately come to mind and clearly demonstrate the ethical challenges deepfakes bring forth. I included the figure on the right to give credence to the fact that a plurality of people believe that making a deepfake without consent is egregious enough to warrant legal action, even in cases where no malice is intended. From an engineering perspective, developing the technology may not have been an ethical lapse, but creating something that can be misused and distributed so easily without proper safeguards is irresponsible and is in fact an ethical lapse. Next slide, please. Thanks. Next, I'd like to analyze this case through the lens of the following ethical systems, beginning with a duty and rights-based approach. This framework prioritizes the rights of an individual above all. It is assumed that there is an unspoken agreement between individuals not to infringe upon each other. Deepfakes are troubling as they can easily be used on an unconsenting individual, thus undermining their liberty. A rights-based approach would encourage the formation of protections for unconsenting individuals without hampering the use of the software between willing participants. Virtue ethics dictates that the characteristics behind the action are what determines whether something is right or wrong. Some of the applicable virtues for this case are honesty, responsibility, and respect. Even neglecting the wrongful application of deepfakes, this technology is dishonest in nature as it portrays individuals committing acts they did not perform. Compounded with the likelihood for misuse, there appears to be a lack of responsibility. Due to the lack of virtues and conversely the presence of vices, it could be inferred that from the perspective of virtue ethics, that not only is the misuse of deepfakes unethical, but the development of deepfakes at all was an ethical lapse. I would like to also posit that a wait and see approach is necessary in determining a utilitarian stance on this matter. Utilitarianism sees anything that benefits the majority as good, even if it harms the individual. It would be possible then, with the right set of external conditions, that the misuse of deepfakes, even if used falsely to indict an individual, could be considered good if deemed to be a benefit to the majority. Next slide, please. Thanks. Lastly, I'd like to address the IEEE Code of Ethics. From the excerpt below, I'd like to point out the clause that states that an engineer has a duty to protect the privacy of others. Therefore, it can be interpreted that developing deepfakes without ensuring the safety of proprietary privacy is not only irresponsible, but may also be a violation of this code.
The impact of ethical issues. So the people who were impacted are victims that are falsely incriminated by deepfake videos. It impact the public because the public were using deepfakes to make their own alternative videos. This could cause harm to the person who they alternate the video. This impact companies because they created their own program for deepfakes. This includes FaceSwap, Deepfakes Lab, and Snapchat, which most of these programs are free to use. The media went crazy after a BuzzFeed video created a deepfake of President Obama and how realistic it was. But now the government has created laws and counter programs to restrict deepfakes. However, deepfakes technology can change the movie industry, like bringing back performers who are no longer alive or have aged. This is a current event that is still unfolding because they keep making better and more realistic deepfakes that even counter programs cannot detect which one is real one. Next. The actions, the possible ethical choices. The actions that software engineers could have done from the beginning is publishing his software and having a copyrighted or a patent, knowing the program could cause malicious intent. And the USA did act by having every material that is deepfake to have a watermark. Another action that could have been taken is banning the access to deepfake tools, but however, this will be problematic for a free society like United States. The last action is every time a piece of digital media is saved, whether created or modified on a computer, it will be assigned a cryptographic hash calculated from the file's content that will serve as digital fingerprint of the file's data. Next.
So I'm going to be talking about the outlook for possible situations. if new technology comes into place, we're sure that more regulations will come in a lot sooner now that we know deepfakes could potentially be used to put people in a bad situation. And to be honest, while most people assume the worst, in time, it's going to be pretty commonplace and a normal thing to use. And we'd argue that it's happening now. On the right, let me just say, sorry for spoilers, but Mark Hamill made a cameo as Luke Skywalker in The Mandalorian. And they originally used CGI, but some guy made a deep fake on YouTube that was a lot better than what Disney used. It's on the right. And they ended up hiring him for future work. And we have musicians like The Strokes and Diplo that are even hiring people for deep fakes in their own music videos. Next slide. To finish things up, deepfakes are a new technology that creates synthetic media. And while most of it is lighthearted, we've covered potential cases of people using it with malicious intent, such as blackmail or just straight up fraud. And some people are going to abuse these things, which is why more and more regulations will come to protect our safety and our privacy. And despite the trepidation surrounding deepfakes, in time, it'll be pretty common technology to use in the future. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Great, excellent job, guys. You guys are doing a great job staying on time. This did not happen last year, but great job by the two groups so far. So we do have time. So does anyone have any questions for the deepfakes group? Okay, all right. So I'm sensing there's no questions. So let's go ahead and move on. So let's give the deepfakes group a round of applause. Okay. All right, and so the next group is going to be PG&E Wildfires. And so is everyone from the Wildfires group here?
Yeah, we're here.
Great. All right, you guys can go ahead and share your screen. Give me 30 seconds to set up your rubric.
All right.
Oh, by the way, even though you guys are presenting, I would like to have your slides. And so if you guys can have one person in your group submit your slides onto Canvas. I mean, when Canvas comes back up, of course, that would be great. And so the slides will be due on Friday. Okay, give me 1 second. Wildfires. You reset the timer. Okay, so you guys can go whenever you're ready.
Oh, can you see the slides?
Yes, I can.
All right. So, hi everyone. Today we're presenting on the Pacific Gas and Electricity Company wildfires, or PG&E for short. And who or what is the PG&E? They're basically an American utility company founded in 1905, and they provide natural gas and electricity to 5.2 million people from Bakersfield to North Santa Barbara County. And in this presentation, we're focusing on the more recent fires, which is around 2018, 2019. But I want to point out that they do have a prior record of being responsible for wildfires. They're responsible for over 40 wildfires starting from 1994, which was an average around 2.5 fires. And the key ethical issues are, number one, public safety. These wildfires aren't just in the mountains. They spread and they destroy residential and commercial areas. And the second ethical issue is environmental issues. California is already in a drought, so having to allocate all the water to put out these fires is really costly, as well as the local ecology. And to put this into scale of one of the wildfires, the biggest one, which is Campfire, you can see on the left is a GIF of how the fire spread, and you can see that it starts to hit Paradise and destroy the entire town. And on the right is just the general area of the fire. And there's a neighborhood in Paradise that gets destroyed, so you guys can see the scale of destruction. And on the right is a picture of them during the wildfire. And we're going to talk about the historical context next.
Hi, I'm Justin. I'll be going over historical context. So for historical context, I'll just be going over some fires that happened within the past 10 years. To start off, I'll talk about the recent one, which was the Dixie Fire. This is known to be the second largest fire within California in state history. So this one was caused by a down power line, which made contact with a tree. For this one, unfortunately, 1 was killed, 3 were injured, and 1,329 buildings were destroyed. This includes houses, general buildings. And then for the next one, which was in 2010 in September, the San Bruno explosion/fire. This one was caused by a gas pipe, which was owned by PG&E. In this one, 8 were killed, 60 were injured, and 38 homes were destroyed. In December 2016, the Ghost Ship Fire. This one was a little more ambiguous than the others, as this one was not clearly caused by PG&E, but it was highly indicated that they were, because PG&E made a lot of settlements where people were trying to sue them. So it's a very very clearly towards them. So in this one, 36 were killed, 2 were injured, and the warehouse that it was in was destroyed. And the one I will be talking about next, which is the campfire, which happened in 2018, which is also known to be the largest fire in California history. 85 were killed, 17 were injured, and 18,000 plus buildings were destroyed. This happened in November. Next slide. So the deadliest and most destructive wildfire in California history, which is the campfire. The fire began on November 8, 2018 in Butte County. Some factors to consider were the heavy grass and the hot and dry environment, and the high wind speeds, which were 50 miles per hour. And on the right, you can see the area that it destroyed, and it started in near the center of it. So it was claimed by PG&E to be initiated by a faulty electrical transmission line. A transmission line goes over very vast distances as opposed to power lines. So as previously stated, 85 were killed, 17 were injured, and 1 individual is still missing, and 80,000 plus buildings were destroyed. The areas destroyed were 150,000 acres, which is approximately 240 square miles. And by the time that the fire was 100% contained, it was on November 25th, and the total damage cost was $16 billion. So to continue off this, I'll be going over the air quality that was going on. So the fire resulted in the worst air pollution ever for the Bay Area and Northern California, says John Baums of the California Air Resources Board. For 2 days, the Bay Area experienced an air quality index value that exceeded 200, which is at the lower or at the most right of the graph. And also to this too, the multiple drinking water systems and plumbing were chemically contaminated. I'll also be going over the technical context. So before I go over to how PG&E equipment starts wildfires, a little statistic. From 2016 to 2020, 88% of wildfires were caused by humans, and over 1,500 wildfires in the past 8 years have been caused by PG&E or have been involved with it. So the chart showcasing 400 plus fires within Northern and Central California had PG&E equipment involved. So as in this chart, you can see the 400 plus fires within Northern and Central California. Some factors to consider, which are strong winds. It can blow sparks and embers across many miles, and this is known as spotting. Moisture, the drier the land is, the more likely it is to spread fire. Weather, extremely hot and dry environments are the most common areas for the start of wildfires. Fuels, trees, grasses, shrubs, and dead leaves are fuel to wildfires. So the direct cause of PG&E involved wildfires are the PG&E equipment. Examples of faulty PG&E equipment are downed power lines, damaged electrical transmission lines, and broken transformers. Faulty PG&E equipment start wildfires by making contact with trees and other combustible materials, which leads to spark and flames. With the contribution of natural factors such as strong winds and dry environments, these spark and flames can travel over vast distances and wreaking havoc. Almost all PG&E related fires are due to faulty electrical transmission lines as opposed to power lines. In certain instances, PG&E management were notified of these faulty equipment, but planned a repair later on. An example of this is the campfire, which they planned to make a repair 2 days after the fire started. And PG&E has planned to develop underground transmission lines due to these instances.
Hello, so my name is Eric. I'll be going over the economic content. So these are just some of the costs relating to PG&E. So then by January 2019, PG&E accumulated 30 billion in wildfire liability, and regulators fined PG&E 2 billion for causing the wildfires, and fixing and burying all PG&E power lines could cost up to $240 billion. Next slide. So the 2018 campfire alone estimated the total damage to be 16.5 billion, including damages over 19,000 structures and homes. And the fire that destroyed the town of Paradise fined PG&E to 3.5 million, which is the maximum penalty allowed under state law. Paradise and Butte County, roughly about 70,000 victims, are to receive 560 million as part of the campfire settlement to those who lost their homes, businesses, and family members in fires sparked by its equipment. And they also had cost 150 million in fire suppression costs. So, and the picture on the right shows PG&E stock dropping from 2018 to 2019, and which led to filing for bankruptcy in the end of January 2019. And so PG&E plans to bury 10% of its power lines, and this projects to cost about 15 to 30 billion. And this will aim to bury about 10,000 miles of its power lines in an effort to prevent wildfires. And I'll also be talking about the personnel context. So PG&E potentially ignited 16 fires by their equipment last year, like fires like the Dixie Fire and the Wildfires. So new CEO Patricia Poppe is to unveil a plan for underground lines, stating she realized moving lines underground is the best way to protect both the utility and the 16 million people who rely on it for power. And also, Governor Gavin Newsom's response to fire and stated new changes are coming to prevent fires in California. So talking about the CEO, Patricia Poppe, previous PG&E regimes have resisted plans to bury long stretches of power lines because of the massive expense, but Patricia has unveiled plans for underground lines several months earlier than she said. She also stated that it's too expensive not to do it. Lives are on the line. However, getting the job done will take several years and millions of dollars. Taking the blame for Zog Fire last year, where 4 people have died, Patricia stated failing to prevent the fire was not a crime, and CEO states that the failing to prevent the fire was not a crime. She would state that her workers are working hard to prevent fires and catastrophic losses that come with them. They have dedicated their careers to it, and criminalizing their judgment is not right. And it has been acknowledged that PG&E has not lived up to expectations in the past, but said changes in leadership and elsewhere ensure it's on track and will do better. And they have listed a wide range of improvements that include more advanced technology to avoid setting wildfires and help detect them quicker. For Gavin Newsom's, the governor states the actions needed to take on replacing the board and bringing in a new CEO, and also implementing more aggressive oversight in the California legislature. He would name stuff like new wildfire cameras, new equipment, new helicopters, and as well as vegetation management. And when asked about the fires in a press conference, he said, "Trust me, we are keeping laser focus of oversight and accountability on PG&E." And the governor would sign an executive order overhauling the state's approach to wildfire prevention, but does not fulfill his promise, as an investigation showed the governor's misrepresentation in his accomplishments and invested in wildfire prevention. He claimed to have 35 priority projects carried out as a result of his executive order, which resulted in 90,000 acres of fire prevention work, but actually showed to be 12,000 acres.
All right, I'm going to be talking about part of the ethical context. So for ethical labs, the key ethical issues that PG&E throughout the years focused on profits over safety. And it shows since this wasn't their first wildfire they started. As previously talked, over 1,500 wildfires in the past 6 years were started by them. And those fires started because they stopped caring about safety. Many people need this company to provide them electricity so that they could have functional lives. But time and time again, PG&E's equipment and lack of property monitoring the situation were to blame. This negligence costed the lives of many, the destruction of property, and unquantifiable damage to the environment. On to the next slide. For the analysis of the ethical dilemma, one of the key tenets for the IEEE and NSPE's Code of Ethics is to hold paramount the safety, health, and welfare of the public. But PG&E pretty much failed all of that. People warned them about the dangers of their faulty equipment for years, and PG&E said that they were going to repair them in due time, but it never really happened. They just brushed it off and allowed the problems to multiply. It left the people to question whether or not to trust them at all. And because of these behaviors, PG&E violated the other codes in this slide, which is conducting themselves honorably, responsibly, ethically, lawfully, so that they can improve their work and usefulness of the profession. On to the next slide. When it comes to power companies, people expect these companies to be able to consistently bring electricity to their homes. As such, I believe utilitarianism is the best framework to analyze this situation. As a reminder, utilitarianism is the theory that an action is right if it brings the greatest good for the greatest number of people. And what PG&E has done was the complete opposite of that. The wildfires they brought caused the greatest pain to the people near the fires, which caused them to evacuate and lose their homes and possibly loved ones. But also cities far away had to deal with it too. The people of San Francisco had to deal with the stress of avoiding breathing in ash and having their waters contaminated.
Hello, so I'm going to do the impact of ethical issues. So I couldn't find sources on the total cost of all PNG wildfires because they caused too many fires. So for this section, I did an analysis on the biggest and most tragic wildfire, the Paradise Campfire. So for the people of Paradise, the population of the residents decreased drastically over 90% from 27,000 to 2,000. The PG&E company, after receiving backlash, promised to enhance inspection with new weather stations, cameras, satellite data, and improved safety operations center. And they ensured a better vegetation management by cutting trees 12 feet away and any trees tall enough to strike if fallen. They claim to have cleared 2,500 miles of line and projected another 2,800 by 2020. And from this new analysis, they saw 5.3 million trees that are a potential threat from wildfires. The company was also tried for 84 counts of, The company was also tried for 84 counts of manslaughter. And afterwards, they were filed for bankruptcy after a liability cost of 30 billion from victims and insurance.
You guys are out of time, so just try to wrap it up as quickly as you can.
Okay, so there's a $13.5 billion compensation to the people who lost their homes and businesses from the 2018 campfire. Half the compensation was paid in cash and the other half was in shares. The 70,000 individual compensated got less than expected because the company's stock dropped. The total damage of the campfire was $16.5 billion. After the P&G was charged for manslaughter, they paid a $3.5 million fee. They paid $13.5 billion for the individuals, and the company stock dropped after hedge funds and people cashed out billions of dollars. And then shortly after bankruptcy, Gavin Newsom passed the law AB 1054, which allowed them to tap into a fund to pay back people for the damages of the wildfire. Next slide, please. So everyone sympathized with the victims and blamed PG&E for its poor management and ethical choices. These are some of the news headlines from 2018 after the incident. Next slide, please. So one alternate course of action is to carry out maintenance plans on vegetation and rotting equipment. For this case, they had a plan to fix all faulty equipment, a $30.4 million plan, but this never happened and was delayed for 5 years until it finally broke and caused a fire in 2018. So the code of ethics that are violated is section 1.1, which is to hold paramount of safety, health, and welfare to the public, to strive to comply with ethical design and sustainable development practices. And also by making false promises to change their practice, they violate code of ethics section 1.5, which is to be honest and realistic about stating claims. The picture on the right is them marking trees, but they never cut it. All right, next slide.
And so there's two directions for them to go into. They either fix and have strong regulation to prevent wildfires, or they just continue with their negligence and cause more wildfires. Their public perception is basically tainted, but they can't have a positive impact if they fix their problems and prevent additional wildfires. And so in conclusion, PG&E negligence caused multiple wildfires that damage a lot of things with over $16.5 billion in damages. Their public perception is tainted, and an alternative action they could do is to keep up better maintenance to prevent wildfires. And that's the end of our presentation.
Great, thank you guys. Yeah, there's definitely a lot to share with wildfires, and I think it's a lesson in making sure you're paying all your maintenance costs and performing that, because otherwise things can get really bad. Okay, so thank you guys. So let's give them a round of applause. Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions on this one, and so we're going to go ahead and move on to the last group today, which is the Columbia Space Shuttle. So is everyone from the Columbia group here?
Yes, we are here.
Okay, great. All right, so you guys can go ahead and share your screen, and then let me go ahead and set up your guys's rubric.
Can I get a mic check? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, cool.
Let me reset the timer. Okay, all right, so you guys can start whenever you're ready.
Hello, everyone. We are here to present Columbia Space Shuttle accident. My name is Josue Plaza.
All right, cool. I think we can move on to the next slide. So we can start with historical context. All right, cool. So my name is Luis Garcia. I'll be giving the historical context for the Space Shuttle Columbia. Just a brief overview of the companies that were involved. Mainly, it's going to be NASA and Rockwell International. Their brief overviews. NASA was created in response to the Soviet launch of Sputnik and it's initiated the space race. It aimed to one-up them and put a man on the moon by 1969, which we accomplished. One of the benefits of having NASA as a company that exists, they were able to put payloads such as drop satellites into orbits, which we could use to observe the solar system and use them for communications. We use them every day now. So it's a huge benefit of having that technology in that company. One of the companies as well that was involved with the production of the space shuttle was Rockwell International. They're a company that was founded in 1919. They started by producing truck axles for the military in use of World War I. From there, they developed and increased their production prospects and started helping with defense. So the space shuttle ended up being manufactured by Rockwell International and was operated by NASA. Rockwell International, like I mentioned before, is a major conglomerate involved in aircraft defense and the space industry. So the Space Shuttle Orbiter became a Boeing program in 1996 when the company purchased the assets from Rockwell International. The Space Shuttle Columbia also became the first shuttle to fly into orbit and went on to have 27 successful flights from 1981 to 2002. The reason Rockwell International was one of the people to start creating the space shuttle program is they won a $2.6 billion contract to help build these orbiters. And the reason these orbiters were put into commission was NASA wanted to have a low-cost means of bringing humans and payloads into low Earth orbit. A payload would be an example. An example of a payload would be like a satellite, which was mentioned prior. And the attitudes towards the management and safety of damage analysis of the shuttle greatly affected the quality of the procedures in place. And Linda Ham was one of the chief. Sorry, I like kind of lost where the rest of that slide is. I think it was formatted weird. Anyway, Linda Ham, she was a NASA management. She was in NASA management, and she was quoted as saying, "You know, there's nothing we could do about damage that has been done to a space shuttle in space. If it has been damaged, it's probably better not to know. I think the crew would rather not know. Don't you think it'd be better for them to have a happy, successful flight and die unexpectedly during entry than to stay in orbit, knowing that there is nothing to be done until air ran out?" End quote. So issues that caused failure of the space shuttle was foam loss in the left wing, and that was due to a manufacturing error. And in checks leading up to the flights, due to these lower attitudes of if things go wrong, there's really nothing we could do. Their testing and checking procedures for trying to mitigate these risks did not really occur, and that was no oversight that occurred. Next slide, please, so we can go into the technical context. So fields of engineering that would be involved with the shuttles primarily were aerospace, mechanical, chemical, and computer engineering. The space shuttles were the first low-cost reusable spacecrafts that would be able to take and retrieve payloads in orbit. Other options at the time that were of a similar technology were one-time use of rockets propelling payloads into the atmosphere. That's kind of what we rely on now as well, since the space shuttles have been out of commission since 2011. The methods to getting to ISS as human beings now are using the Russian Soyuz capsules. They just kind of take individuals in little pods and they eject them into the ISS area where they get docked, and they return down into Earth through a similar method. Challenges that came from the shuttle in general is just getting the design to meet the criteria of functionality while remaining cost efficient. As you'd imagine, a space shuttle is a massive undertaking and requires a lot of money and materials that need to be able to withstand the forces of escaping and re-entering an atmosphere. So just getting that functionality while remaining cost efficient took a while. There was many delays just due to design. And another challenge came from maintenance and manufacturing standards. They were low enough due to their attitudes about safety to allow for errors to occur, which was one of the reasons why the Space Shuttle Columbia failed. They just didn't really check manufacturing issues with like the foam. And that concludes the historical and technical context.
Alrighty. My name's Samson. I'm going to be going over the economic and personal sections for this discussion. So pretty much after the incident of the Kalyan space shuttle, the government, they had to spend like lots and lots of money on this. And this include both the investigation and the cleanup fees. NASA spent about $112.6 million to support the board's investigation, and $21.1 million to help in the collection and the assembly of the missing pieces of the shuttle from East Texas and Louisiana. Apart from the investigation and the cleanup costs, there are other costs as well. The Columbia orbiter cost $2 billion, and the space shuttle operating costs $4 billion. From this, we can see that it was really expensive just to have this project going on in general. For this project, though, they weren't really trying to make any profit, but instead they were actually trying to perform test flights and landings that the Space Shuttle Enterprise never did before. Before the launching of the Space Shuttle, there were some delays, and this was because there were other missions in process. And this type of delay didn't really cost them any money, but it did cost them quite some time because they're trying to push this project out, but they couldn't because there were a lot of other things going on. Also, during this time, there weren't really any competing companies, but there was a joint operation with the Israeli space experiment known as MEDIX. MEDIX is pretty much the Mediterranean Israel dust experiment where they were researching the mineral dust transport through the air in the Mediterranean Sea and the tropical Atlantic Ocean. And then talking about the Israel Space Agency, actually one of the astronauts, Ilan Ramon, one of the astronauts that died, he was actually the first Israeli astronaut to go to space. Can I go to the next slide, please? He was a second generation Holocaust victim, and during the space shuttle event, he was pretty much just a payload specialist. Can you go back to the personnel slide? So during like this search process of the missing pieces, a lot of different groups of people joined the search for the shuttle pieces. About like 14,000 federals and state workers and volunteers walked through like forests and swamps in search for the shuttle pieces. Divers combed the bottom Texas lakes, and helicopters searched from the air. Another important person to mention for this was the NASA Administrator Sean O'Keefe. He was nominated by President George Bush as the 10th administrator of NASA. He led the space agency during the time of the Columbia Space Shuttle incident. He left in 2005, but he actually stayed in contact with the crew's family members after the accident. And President Bush, he also actually tried to give some condolences to the family members of the fallen crew members. Colombian Accident Investigation Board played a big role in this as well after the incident by evaluating the shuttle program management. The board turned its attention to the organizational culture factors behind the failures. And lastly, it is worth mentioning that many scientists were involved in the research that was conducted by these 7 crew members that died. It is important to see that many heads are needed for such important research because like accidents like these can happen, and if there's more people involved, you can just lower that factor of safety.
So for the ethical lapse, the Department of Defense had offered to use their spy cameras in order to get a closer look of the damage that was done by the foam. And even though NASA saw the issue that the shuttle was facing, the officials still decided to tell them that they were all good to go for re-entry. NASA employees tried speaking up, employees like Rodney Rusher, who's pictured there in the slide. He went on to speak about the incident and said that he had begged the mission management team to seek the opportunity for high resolution photos in order to see how critical the issue was, but his requests were currently denied. There were other employees who said they were just being ignored, or their ideas were being shut down by the NASA officials. And the reason for NASA's decision to not tell the crew about the danger they were in was because they were helpless. They really couldn't fix the problem, and there's nothing they could really do about it. The problem was that the different solutions they looked at during the incident did not work. So it was either let them stay up there or risk coming down. So they were to stay up there, run out of oxygen, or risk their lives upon re-entry. Next slide, please. To the ethical dilemma, when looking at the theoretical ethical frameworks, I observed the duty ethics and rights ethics, which both claim that we have to protect the rights of others. I think that the crew should have been made aware of the issue because their lives were in danger, and it was something that they had to keep in mind when coming to reentry. In the NSP Code of Ethics, public safety is put as #1 importance in the rules of practice. And due to NASA's officials not wanting to recognize the various issues that could arise from the problem the shuttle was facing, they unknowingly put people in danger. It is reported that the debris expanded over 2,000 square miles. Luckily, I don't think anybody was hurt, but they did put people in danger. Even if NASA told the crew about their issue and looked into several possible outcomes, they would have still faced backlash due to the previous knowledge of the problems they were facing with the foam. Next.
The cause in which they died will continue.
My bad. So the impact on ethical. Fortunately, all 7 crew members died during re-entry, and the Columbia Accident Investigation Board was formed to investigate the tragedy. And this board wants to be transparent, whether it's between engineers, astronauts, or companies. And they also want to perform assessments before accidents like this in the future. Also, the board pointed fingers at NASA for ignorance, since they were the ones that gave it a go. And then the former President of the United States, George W. Bush, offered his condolences on media, as seen on this video.
The cause in which they died will continue. Mankind is led into the darkness beyond our world by the inspiration of discovery and the longing to understand. Our journey into space will go on.
And from this accident, companies have learned the hard way, like to ensure proper safety when performing space exploration. And then, as you can see, there was like a comment that was sent to Rick Husband, one of the astronauts, and the mission control were telling them that there was no concern when they sent like a footage of what happened to one of the wings. And up to this point, space exploration still continues because NASA still is part of the space exploration programs. And now we have SpaceX. And then, as former President Bush has said, he would encourage everyone to keep going after this tragedy. And here are some possible ethical choices. One error is that all data was stored in an orbiter, which means that the data did not transmit directly to the mission control. And a possible solution to this would have been a direct transmission of the data from the orbiter, and this would ensure like a possibility to determine a solution while the crew carry out experiments in space. Second ethical error was that the mission control sent a post-launch video to Rick Husband and said that there was absolutely no concern for entry. The solution here I would find is for NASA to be completely honest with the crew. The crew signed up for this space exploration program, knowing the risk, and at least the control could have done is to like inform them of what is happening. Otherwise, a possibility could have been discussed to fix like the left wing while orbiting in space. The last ethical error was reusing the external ring that was also known to corrode from this was like previously discovered in the previous accident with the Space Shuttle Challenger. Knowing the ring was defected due to Challenger's tragedy, selecting a different material with a higher factor of safety or a material that had no corrosion would have prevented this tragedy.
Question: would it have been possible to save Columbia's crew? According to the Columbia Accident Investigation Board, the answer was yes, if the damage to the left wing had been detected by either spacewalk or the requested imaging.
We availed ourselves of photographic techniques which were not used because it was not assessed as being so critical.
You guys
How?
are out of time.
Well,
so
the
let's,
Space Shuttle
let's wrap it up
Atlantis
soon.
was already being prepared for its next launch. Originally scheduled to launch on March 1st, the launch could have been accomplished safely as early as February 10th. According to calculations, the
So future outlook, they could somewhat have some kind of repair kits for future shuttles, so they could possibly fix it while orbiting. The head engineers could actually have direct contact to the Department of Defense, since NASA kept refusing the approval of getting the pictures taken of the shuttle orbiting. They could always predict for worst case scenarios. Don't sit, they like never think that, oh, something is strong enough to withstand any type of material hitting it, which clearly the wing was not able to withstand it. They could have a specialized crew for certain rescue missions. So if anything happens like that, where they can't come back into orbit or they can't enter back out onto Earth and all that, they could have some sort of rescue mission. Or they could redesign parts once issues arrives, because like clearly the foam on the shuttle couldn't withstand all the forces on it, which was known for multiple years, but they kept just going with it. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Great. Thank you, guys. And so let's give our last group a round of applause. A cute dog. All right, so thank you, everybody. So that was a very successful first day of presentation. So we'll pick this up again on Thursday. Okay? And so on Thursday, the order, let me stop the timer. The order is going to be Deepwater Horizon, followed by Fort Pinto, then BF Goodrich, then our last group is the 737 MAX. Okay. All right, so thank you everyone for coming today. So hope you guys enjoyed the presentations, and then we'll pick this up on Thursday. So have a great day. See you then.
Thank you, Professor. Take care.
Thanks, guys. You too.
Just one question before we leave. When might we know how we did on the presentations?
So I'm going to release it all at once, and so I'm gonna look at the slides one more time too, because you know there's some slides I didn't get a great look at, and so after everyone submits their slides on Friday, then I'll release the grades then.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.